The smoke still rose from the charred remains of the boarding house 3 days after the fire, and Amelia Hartford stood at the edge of the ruins with her hand pressed against the bandages covering half her face. She had survived when 6 others had not, pulled from the flames by a stranger who disappeared before she could thank him, and now she wondered if survival had been a mercy or a curse. The doctor in Taylor, Texas, had done what he could, but his eyes had told her everything his careful words had not when he changed the dressings that morning in the spring of 1878. The town had grown quiet around her. Where once neighbors called greetings and shopkeepers smiled, now there were sideways glances and hushed whispers. Children stared until their mothers pulled them away. Amelia was 22 years old, unmarried, and had come to Taylor 6 months ago to work as a schoolteacher. She had saved enough from her teaching salary to rent a room at Mrs. Patterson's boarding house, a tidy establishment on the edge of town where 5 other women and 1 elderly gentleman had lived. Now, Mrs. Patterson was gone, along with 3 of the other boarders. The fire had started in the kitchen sometime after midnight, spreading with terrifying speed through the old wooden structure. Amelia remembered waking to smoke, thick and choking, remembered the heat that seared her skin as she tried to find the door in the darkness. She remembered falling, and then strong arms lifting her, carrying her through an inferno that roared and crackled around them. She had seen nothing but flames and shadows, felt nothing but pain and terror, and then she was outside on the grass, coughing and gasping while the building collapsed behind her in a shower of sparks and ash. The right side of her face had taken the worst of it. The burns stretched from her temple down to her jaw, angry and raw beneath the bandages. Her right ear was damaged, her hair on that side burned away entirely. The doctor said the scars would be permanent, that the skin would heal twisted and discolored. He had been kind but honest, and Amelia appreciated the honesty even as it broke something inside her. She turned away from the ruins and walked slowly back toward the center of town. She had been staying in a small room above the general store, charity from Mr. Henderson, who had known her father years ago. The school board had sent word that they would be seeking a replacement teacher, that perhaps it would be better for everyone if she took time to recover. Everyone meant the children, she understood. They did not want the children frightened by their teacher's ruined face. The afternoon sun was warm on her shoulders as she made her way down the dusty Main Street. A wagon rattled past, and the driver touched his hat to her but did not meet her eyes. Amelia kept her chin up, kept walking, though each pitying glance felt like a fresh wound. She was passing the Lucky Star Saloon when a commotion erupted inside. Raised voices, the crash of breaking furniture, and then a man came flying backward through the swinging doors to land hard in the dirt at her feet. Amelia stumbled back, startled, as 2 more men emerged from the saloon, both of them rough-looking cowboys with liquor on their breath and meanness in their eyes. "You cheating son of a bitch," one of them growled, advancing on the man in the dirt. "Nobody takes money off Charlie Moss without paying for it." The man on the ground rolled to his feet with surprising grace. He was tall and lean, with dark hair that needed cutting and several days of stubble on his jaw. His clothes were dusty from travel, his boots worn but well cared for. He held up his hands in a placating gesture, but his green eyes were hard and watchful. "I did not cheat," he said evenly. "You lost fair and square. Walk away now and we will call it settled. The hell we will." Charlie Moss pulled a knife from his belt, a long, wicked blade that caught the sunlight. His companion, a shorter man with a scar across his nose, moved to flank the stranger from the other side. Amelia should have walked away. Should have hurried past and let these men settle their differences without her. But the stranger's back was to the wall now, and there was something in his face, some quality of dignity and quiet courage, that made her step forward instead. "Sheriff Palmer is just down the street," she called out, her voice carrying clear and strong despite the bandages. "I am certain he would be interested in whatever is happening here." 3 pairs of eyes turned to her. Charlie Moss scowled, his knife still raised. His companion sneered. But the stranger looked at her with something that might have been surprise, his gaze meeting hers directly without flinching or looking away. Without that automatic recoil she had learned to expect. "Mind your business, lady," Charlie said. "This does not concern you." "Violence in the street concerns everyone," Amelia replied, standing her ground though her heart hammered against her ribs. "Or do you want to explain to the sheriff why you are threatening a man with a knife in broad daylight?" The mention of the sheriff seemed to penetrate Charlie's alcohol-fogged brain. He glanced up the street, then back at the stranger, his expression ugly with frustration. "This is not over," he said, jabbing his knife toward the man. "Not by a long shot." He and his companion backed away, still muttering threats, before turning and stalking off around the corner. Amelia released a breath she had not known she was holding. The stranger dusted off his pants and picked up his hat from where it had fallen. He was even taller than she had thought, well over 6 feet, with broad shoulders and the weathered look of a man who spent most of his time outdoors. When he settled his hat on his head and turned to her, his smile was warm and genuine. "I am obliged to you, miss," he said. "That could have gotten ugly." "It already was ugly," Amelia said. "Are you hurt?" "Nothing but my pride." He extended a hand. "Isaac Kane at your service." Amelia hesitated for only a moment before taking his hand. His grip was firm but gentle, his palm calloused from hard work. "Amelia Hartford." "Well, Miss Hartford, I believe I owe you a debt of gratitude. May I buy you a cup of coffee? There is a cafe just across the street, and I could use something to settle my nerves after that excitement." She almost refused. The thought of sitting in the cafe where people could stare at her, where she would have to endure more pitying glances and uncomfortable silence, made her want to retreat to her little room above the general store. But Isaac Kane was still looking at her with that open, easy expression, as though her bandages were no more remarkable than a bonnet or a shawl. "All right," she heard herself say. "Coffee would be nice." The cafe was quiet at this hour, the lunch rush long past and supper still hours away. They took a table by the window, and Isaac ordered coffee and a plate of shortbread cookies from Mrs. Chen, the elderly Chinese woman who ran the establishment. When Mrs. Chen brought their order, she gave Amelia a small smile that held more warmth than pity, and Amelia felt something loosen in her chest. "So," Isaac said, stirring sugar into his coffee. "Have you lived in Taylor long?" "6 months," Amelia said. "I came to teach at the schoolhouse." "Or I did teach before the fire. I heard about that fire, terrible tragedy. You were there," she nodded, her hand moving unconsciously to the bandages. "I was staying at the boarding house." "I am sorry," Isaac said simply. "That must have been frightening." It was. She took a sip of her coffee, grateful for something to do with her hands. "Someone pulled me out. I never saw who it was. The smoke was too thick. A guardian angel, perhaps. Perhaps." She looked at him across the table, this stranger who had not looked away, who did not seem bothered by her injuries. "What brings you to Taylor, Mr. Kane?" "Isaac, please. I am just passing through mostly. I have been working cattle drives for the past few years, moving herds up to Kansas. We finished a drive last month, and I have been making my way back south, taking odd jobs where I can find them. I heard they might be hiring hands at the Thompson Ranch outside town." "They might be," Amelia said. "Mr. Thompson runs a large operation." His foreman was in town last week looking for experienced cowboys. Then I will ride out there tomorrow. He took a cookie and bit into it, then grinned. Mrs. Chen makes the best shortbread in Texas, I would wager. Despite everything, Amelia found herself smiling. I would not know. I have not tried much shortbread in Texas. Where are you from originally? Missouri. A little town called Liberty, north of Kansas City. My parents had a farm there, but they both passed a few years ago. Yellow fever. I came to Texas to start fresh, to make my own way. That takes courage, Isaac said, starting over in a new place all alone. I did not feel very courageous, Amelia admitted. I felt desperate and sad and lost. But teaching helped. The children helped. They were so eager to learn, so full of questions and energy. I felt useful again. Why did you say you did teach? You are still a teacher, are you not? Amelia looked down at her coffee cup. The school board thinks it would be better if I took time to recover. They are looking for a replacement. Better for whom? The question was gentle but pointed. Amelia met his eyes, seeing nothing but genuine curiosity there. For the children, they said, so they would not be frightened. Frightened by what? By bandages. Children are more resilient than adults give them credit for. If the school board cannot see that, then they are fools. The words were matter of fact, not angry or pitying, and somehow that made them mean more. Amelia felt her throat tighten with unexpected emotion. You are kind to say so. I am honest to say so. There is a difference. Isaac finished his coffee and leaned back in his chair. Tell me about your students. What did you teach them? And so she told him, the words spilling out as she described the one-room schoolhouse, the 15 children who ranged from 6 to 14 years old, the lessons in reading and arithmetic and geography. She told him about little Susan Miller, who could not say her letters but could draw the most beautiful pictures, about Tommy Henderson, who was brilliant with numbers, about the Rodriguez twins who spoke Spanish at home and were learning English with determined concentration. She talked about the joy of watching a child's face light up with understanding, the satisfaction of knowing she had helped open a door to a larger world. Isaac listened with his full attention, asking questions, laughing at her stories, and for the first time since the fire, Amelia forgot about her bandages and her scars. She forgot about the stares and the whispers. She was just herself again, just Amelia, talking with someone who seemed genuinely interested in what she had to say. The sun was setting by the time they left the cafe, the sky painted in shades of orange and gold. Isaac walked her back to the general store, his long strides matching her shorter ones with easy courtesy. Thank you for the coffee, Amelia said when they reached the door, and for listening. I have not talked that much in days. The pleasure was mine, Isaac said. He tipped his hat to her, that same warm smile on his face. I hope I will see you again, Miss Hartford, before I leave Taylor. I hope so too, Amelia said, and realized she meant it. She watched him walk away into the gathering dusk, this cowboy who had looked at her with such easy acceptance, and felt something stir in her heart that she had thought the fire had burned away. The next morning, Amelia changed her bandages herself, having learned the technique from Dr. Morrison. The burns were healing, the raw angry red fading to pink in places, but the damage was clear. The right side of her face was twisted, the skin puckered and discolored. Her eye on that side still worked, thankfully, though the skin around it pulled tight. She forced herself to look in the small mirror, to see what everyone else saw, and then she wrapped fresh bandages around her face and went downstairs to help Mr. Henderson in the store. She was measuring out flour for Mrs. Thompson, the rancher's wife, when Isaac Kane walked through the door. He was cleaned up from yesterday, freshly shaved and wearing a different shirt, though his boots were still scuffed and dusty. He nodded to Amelia, then approached the counter where Mr. Henderson was tallying accounts. "Good morning," Isaac said. "I need to pick up some supplies. A new rope, some tobacco, and a bar of soap if you have it." "We have all that," Mr. Henderson said, reaching for the items. "You are the fellow who helped out Miss Hartford yesterday, are you not?" "She helped me," Isaac corrected with a smile. "Saved me from a thrashing, most likely." "Charlie Moss is a mean drunk," Mr. Henderson agreed. "You are lucky she came along when she did. That will be $2 for the supplies." Isaac paid and gathered his purchases, then turned to Amelia. "Miss Hartford, would you like to take a walk with me? It is a fine morning, and I would enjoy the company." Mrs. Thompson glanced between them with ill-concealed curiosity, and Amelia felt heat rise in her unbandaged cheek. But Isaac's expression was open and friendly, with none of the awkward hesitation she had come to expect from others. "Let me finish up here," she said. "I can take a break in a few minutes." They walked together out of town, following a path that led toward the creek that ran through the valley. The morning was clear and cool, the Texas spring showing itself in wildflowers that dotted the grass and birds that sang from the mesquite trees. Isaac carried his purchases easily in one hand, his other hand hooked in his belt as he walked. "Did you go to the Thompson Ranch?" Amelia asked. "I did. Got hired on as a ranch hand. Mr. Thompson said they are preparing for Roundup next month, getting the cattle ready to drive to market. It will be steady work for at least a few months. So you will be staying in Taylor for a while. Looks that way." He glanced at her with that easy smile. "I cannot say I am disappointed. It seems like a good town, and I have met at least one person here worth knowing better." Amelia's heart did a strange little skip. "You hardly know me at all. Then I should remedy that." They had reached the creek, and Isaac sat down on a large flat rock near the water's edge, gesturing for Amelia to join him. "Tell me something about yourself that I would not guess from looking at you." Amelia settled onto the rock, arranging her skirts around her. "I can play the piano, though I have not had much chance lately. The schoolhouse does not have one, and neither did the boarding house." "Do you enjoy it?" "Very much. My mother taught me when I was young. She said music was one of the most important things a person could have in their life, something that could bring joy even in the darkest times." "She sounds like a wise woman." She was. Amelia watched the water flow past, clear and constant. "I miss her. I miss them both, my parents. Sometimes I wonder if coming to Texas was running away rather than starting over." "Maybe it was both," Isaac said. "Maybe that is allowed." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, listening to the creek and the birdsong. Then Isaac said, "Would you like to know something about me?" "Yes." "I cannot read very well. I know my letters can puzzle out signs and simple things, but anything more than that is beyond me. I never went to school as a child. My family moved around too much following work, and there was never time for learning." Amelia looked at him in surprise. He met her gaze steadily, without shame or defiance, simply stating a fact. "Is that something you would like to change?" she asked. "I think so. I am 30 years old, and I have seen enough of the world to know that reading opens doors I cannot even imagine, but I do not know where to start." "I could teach you," Amelia said, the words coming out before she had fully thought them through. "If you wanted. I have time now, and teaching is what I do, what I did." Isaac's expression brightened. "You would do that, of course. We could start with simple books, work our way up. If you are serious about learning, I am serious about teaching. When would we start? Tomorrow, if you like. There is a room in the church that Reverend Matthews lets people use for meetings. We could meet there in the evenings after you finish work at the ranch. Then it is settled." Isaac stood and offered her his hand to help her up. When she took it, he held on for just a moment longer than necessary, his thumb brushing across her knuckles. Thank you, Amelia, truly. The use of her first name sent a warm flutter through her chest. You are welcome, Isaac. They began their lessons the next evening. Isaac arrived at the church just as the sun was setting, smelling of leather and horses, his hat in his hands. Amelia had brought a primer that had belonged to one of her youngest students, along with a slate and chalk for practice. She quickly discovered that Isaac had not been exaggerating about his limited skills. He knew the alphabet but struggled with the sounds, could write his name but little else. But he was patient and determined, working through each lesson with focused concentration. He did not grow frustrated when he made mistakes, simply tried again, his large, rough hands holding the chalk carefully as he copied letters onto the slate. Amelia found herself enjoying the teaching more than she had expected. With just one student, she could tailor the lessons to his needs, could take time to explain things in different ways until they made sense. And Isaac was an attentive student, asking thoughtful questions, making connections she had not anticipated. After that first lesson, they met 3 times a week. Monday, Wednesday, and Friday evenings became the times Amelia looked forward to most. Isaac would arrive tired from a long day of ranch work, but he never complained, never suggested cutting a lesson short. Instead, he would settle into the chair across from her and give her his full attention, and slowly, steadily, his skills improved. They talked about more than just reading. Between lessons, they shared stories about their lives. Isaac told her about growing up in Oklahoma Territory, the son of a wandering ranch hand and a Choctaw woman who had died when he was young. He described the cattle drives he had worked, the long, dusty miles from Texas to Kansas, the camaraderie and hardship of life on the trail. He spoke of the places he had seen, the people he had met, the lessons he had learned about patience and perseverance, and the importance of keeping your word. Amelia shared her own stories in return. She told him about growing up on the farm in Missouri, about her father's quiet strength and her mother's gentle wisdom. She described the devastation of losing them both within weeks of each other, the hollow loneliness that had followed. She talked about her decision to come to Texas, about the fear and hope that had warred in her heart as she stepped off the train in Taylor for the first time. I wanted to prove I could stand on my own, she admitted one evening as they sat in the church room with their books. I wanted to show that I was strong enough, capable enough to make my own way in the world. You did prove it, Isaac said. You are still proving it every day. I lost my position at the school. I am living on charity. I spend most of my time hiding in that room above the general store because I cannot stand the way people look at me. Isaac set down his book and looked at her directly. The way they look at you says more about them than it does about you. They see the bandages and the scars because they do not know how to see anything else, but that does not make them right. You do not understand, Amelia said, her voice tight with emotion. You cannot understand what it is like to have people recoil from you, to see children cry because of your face. I am not who I was before the fire. That person is gone. No, Isaac said firmly. That person is sitting right here in front of me. You are still Amelia Hartford, still the woman who faced down 2 armed men to help a stranger, still the teacher who cares about her students and lights up when she talks about their successes. The fire changed what you look like. It did not change who you are. Tears stung Amelia's eyes, both on the damaged side and the whole side. How can you say that? You barely know me. I know enough. I know you are brave and kind and smart. I know you are patient with a stubborn cowboy who struggles with his letters. I know you make me laugh and think and want to be better than I am. He reached across the table and took her hand, his touch gentle but sure. I know that when I look at you, I see nothing but beauty here. The words hung in the air between them, simple and honest and devastating in their sincerity. Amelia stared at him, at his weathered face and kind eyes, and felt something break open inside her chest, something that had been locked tight since the fire. "Isaac," she whispered. "I mean it," he said. "Every word. I started looking forward to these lessons not because I want to learn to read, though I do, but because they mean I get to spend time with you. I think about you when I am out working cattle, wonder what you are doing, what you are thinking. I know it has only been a few weeks, but Amelia, I am falling in love with you." She should have pulled her hand away. Should have told him he was being foolish, that he could not possibly love someone like her, someone marked and damaged and uncertain of her own future. But the words would not come. Instead, she turned her hand in his so their fingers could intertwine. "I think about you too," she admitted softly. "All the time, when I am measuring flour or sweeping the store or lying awake at night. I wonder where you are if you are thinking of me, if this connection I feel is real or just something I am imagining because I am lonely and afraid." "It is real," Isaac said. He stood and moved around the table to kneel beside her chair, still holding her hand. "I cannot promise you riches or an easy life. I am just a cowboy, and I will probably always be just a cowboy. But I can promise you honesty and loyalty, and a love that will not waver no matter what happens. If you will have me, Amelia, I will spend the rest of my life showing you every day that you are beautiful and valuable and loved." She looked down at him, this good man who had somehow seen past her scars to the person underneath, and felt hope bloom in her heart like those wildflowers on the prairie. "Yes," she said, her voice steady despite the tears on her cheeks. "Yes, Isaac, I will have you." He stood and drew her up with him, and then his arms were around her, and she was holding him just as tightly, her face pressed against his shoulder. They stood like that for a long moment, just holding each other, and Amelia felt safer and more whole than she had since before the fire. When they finally pulled apart, Isaac cupped her face gently in his hands, his thumbs brushing along her jaw on both sides, the bandaged and the unbandaged with equal tenderness. "May I kiss you?" he asked. In answer, Amelia rose on her toes and pressed her lips to his. The kiss was soft and sweet, filled with promise and hope, and when they broke apart, both of them were smiling. News of their courtship spread through Taylor with the speed of wildfire. Some people were supportive, pleased to see Amelia happy again. Others were scandalized, whispering that Isaac must have an ulterior motive, that no man would truly want a scarred woman unless he was after something. Mr. Henderson defended them fiercely, as did Mrs. Chen and several of the other business owners who had come to know and respect Amelia during her time in town. The school board, hearing that Amelia was being courted, sent a representative to speak with her. Mr. Lawson, a portly man who owned the feed store, cleared his throat awkwardly as he stood in the general store one afternoon. "Miss Hartford, the board has been discussing your situation," he said. "We understand you have been seeing that cowboy, Isaac Kane." "I have," Amelia said, keeping her voice level. "Is that a problem?" No, of course not. You are a grown woman, free to see whomever you choose. It is just that we have been reconsidering our decision about your teaching position." Hope flared in Amelia's chest. "Reconsidering how?" "Well, if you were to be married, that would change things. A married woman teaching is more acceptable than an unmarried woman, especially one who is, visibly marked by tragedy. And Mr. Kane seems to be a steady sort. We have heard good things about his work at the Thompson Ranch." The hope turned to anger, sharp and bright. "So you would give me my position back not because I am a good teacher, but because being married would make my scars more palatable to you?" Mr. Lawson blinked at her tone. "Miss Hartford, I do not think you understand the delicacy of the situation." "Oh, I understand perfectly. You dismissed me because you were afraid of what people would say, afraid the children would be frightened, afraid of anything that might be uncomfortable or difficult. But you are willing to overlook all that if I become respectable again by getting married." She drew herself up to her full height, her eyes blazing. "I do not want the position back, Mr. Lawson, not under those terms. If I am not good enough to teach on my own merits, then I will find another way to make my contribution to this town." She turned and walked away, leaving Mr. Lawson sputtering behind her. Her hands were shaking with anger and something like exhilaration. She had never spoken to anyone like that before, had never stood up for herself so fiercely. But Isaac's words echoed in her mind, his absolute certainty that she was valuable and worthy, and she found the strength to believe him. That evening, she told Isaac what had happened. They were sitting by the creek again, having moved their lessons outdoors now that the weather was warmer. Isaac listened carefully, his expression growing serious. "You did the right thing," he said when she finished. "Those people do not deserve to have you teaching their children if they cannot see your worth." "But I miss it," Amelia said. "I miss teaching so much. I feel useless without it, like I have lost my purpose." Isaac was quiet for a moment, turning something over in his mind. Then he said, "What if we started our own school?" "What?" "A school for people who need teaching but cannot get it elsewhere. People like me who never had the chance to learn, or children whose families cannot afford the regular school, or anyone who wants to better themselves. You could teach whatever you wanted, however you wanted, without a board telling you what is acceptable." Amelia stared at him, the idea taking shape in her mind. "That is ambitious. It would take time and effort and probably money we do not have. We could start small. Just a few students at first, meeting in the church or somewhere else Reverend Matthews might let us use. I could help once my reading gets better. I am good with numbers, could teach basic arithmetic, and you have more knowledge than this whole town put together when it comes to teaching. You really think we could do it?" "I think you could do anything you set your mind to, Amelia Hartford. And I would be honored to help." She kissed him then, right there by the creek in the fading light, and when they pulled apart, she was smiling. "Then let us do it. Let us build something new." They went to Reverend Matthews the next day. The Reverend was a kind man in his 50s who had spoken out against the school board's dismissal of Amelia. When they explained their idea, he listened thoughtfully, his fingers steepled under his chin. "I think it is an excellent notion," he said when they finished. "The church exists to serve the community, and this would certainly do that. You may use the meeting room 3 evenings a week, and on Saturday afternoons as well if you need it. I will not charge you rent, but I would appreciate a small donation to the church when you are able." "Thank you, Reverend," Amelia said, relief flooding through her. "We will make sure the space is well cared for. I have no doubt of that." The Reverend smiled at them both. "You two are doing good work. Do not let anyone tell you different." They spread word about the school through Mrs. Chen at the cafe and Mr. Henderson at the general store, through the ranch hands Isaac worked with, and the customers who came through town. Within a week, they had 6 students committed to attending. 3 were adults who had never learned to read, including a Mexican ranch hand named Eduardo and a widow named Mrs. Palmer who wanted to be able to read her Bible. The other 3 were children whose families could not afford the fees at the regular school. The first class met on a Monday evening in late May. Amelia had spent the afternoon preparing, gathering books and slates and chalk, arranging the chairs in a circle so everyone could see and be seen. When the students arrived, nervous and hopeful, she felt that old familiar joy kindle in her chest. "Welcome," she said, looking around the circle at their faces. My name is Amelia Hartford, and I am here to help you learn. Reading and writing are tools that can open doors you might not even know exist. They can give you power over your own life, the ability to understand contracts and signs and letters from loved ones far away. But learning takes patience and practice, and there will be times when it feels difficult or frustrating. I promise you that I will be patient with you if you promise to be patient with yourself. Can we all agree to that? They nodded, and Eduardo said in his accented English, "We agree, Miss Hartford. We are ready to learn." And so they began. Amelia moved around the circle, working with each student individually while the others practiced their letters on slates. Isaac helped where he could, his own skills improving rapidly as he taught others. The adults were self-conscious at first, embarrassed by their lack of knowledge, but Amelia's gentle encouragement and Isaac's easy humor put them at ease. The children, meanwhile, were simply excited to be learning, their enthusiasm infectious. After the first week, word continued to spread, and more students showed up. By the end of the second week, they had 12 regular attendees. By the middle of June, they had 20, and Reverend Matthews had to find them a larger space in the church. Amelia had never been happier. Despite the stares she still received when she walked through town, despite the bandages she still wore though the wounds beneath were healing, she felt purposeful and alive. Every evening she taught, every breakthrough a student achieved, every shy smile from someone who had just read their first full sentence filled her with a profound sense of rightness. And through it all, Isaac was beside her. He continued working at the Thompson Ranch during the day, but his evenings and Saturdays were devoted to the school and to Amelia. They had not formally announced an engagement, but everyone in Taylor knew they were together, knew that Isaac Kane and Amelia Hartford were building something special together. One warm evening in early July, after the students had all gone home and they were tidying up the classroom, Isaac cleared his throat. "Amelia, there is something I want to ask you." She looked up from the books she was stacking, her heart beginning to beat faster at the serious tone in his voice. "What is it?" He crossed the room to stand in front of her, taking her hands in his. "I know we have been courting for only a few months. I know the proper thing would be to wait longer, to follow all the conventions and proprieties. But I also know that I love you more than I thought it was possible to love another person. I know that I want to spend every day for the rest of my life with you, building this school, building a family, building a future together." He released one of her hands to reach into his pocket, pulling out a small velvet box. When he opened it, Amelia saw a simple gold band with a small pearl set in the center, modest but beautiful. "This was my mother's ring," Isaac said softly. "The only thing I have from her. I would be honored if you would wear it, Amelia. Will you marry me?" Tears streamed down both sides of Amelia's face, soaking into the bandages on one side, running free on the other. "Yes," she said, her voice breaking with joy. "Yes, Isaac, I will marry you." He slipped the ring onto her finger and it fit perfectly, as though it had been made for her. Then he pulled her into his arms and kissed her, deep and tender and full of promise. They were married 3 weeks later in Reverend Matthews' church, with half the town in attendance. Mrs. Chen made the cake, and Mr. Henderson gave Amelia away since she had no family of her own. Several of their students attended, including Eduardo and Mrs. Palmer, and the children who had become so dear to Amelia's heart. On her wedding day, Amelia chose not to wear bandages. The scars on the right side of her face were fully healed now, raised and discolored but no longer raw. She had been practicing looking at them in the mirror, learning to see herself as Isaac saw her, whole and beautiful despite the marks the fire had left. When she walked down the aisle in her simple white dress, her face bare for everyone to see. There were gasps and whispers. But Amelia kept her eyes on Isaac, standing at the front of the church in his best suit with his dark hair neatly combed and his eyes shining with love. When she reached him and he took her hands, he smiled at her with such tenderness that everything else fell away. "You are beautiful," he whispered, loud enough for only her to hear. "The most beautiful woman I have ever seen." "I love you," she whispered back. Reverend Matthews performed the ceremony, his words about love and commitment and partnership resonating through the small church. When he pronounced them husband and wife and Isaac kissed his bride, the congregation applauded, and Amelia knew that she had found exactly where she belonged. They moved into a small house on the edge of town, a 2-bedroom cottage that Mr. Thompson helped them purchase. The rancher had been so impressed with Isaac's work that he offered him a permanent position as a foreman, with better pay and more responsibility. Isaac accepted gratefully, knowing that the steady income would allow them to keep the school running and perhaps even expand it. The school continued to grow. By the end of summer, they had 30 students ranging in age from 7 to 62. They had to split into 2 groups, one that met Monday and Wednesday, another on Thursday and Saturday. Amelia taught reading and writing and history and geography. Isaac taught mathematics and practical skills like how to read contracts and keep accounts. Together, they created a curriculum that was flexible and responsive to their students' needs, teaching not just academic subjects but life skills that would help their students navigate the world more successfully. In September, a reporter from the Austin newspaper came to Taylor to write a story about their school. The article, when it was published, praised their innovative approach and Amelia's dedication to serving students who had been overlooked by the traditional education system. It mentioned her scars, but in a matter-of-fact way, noting that she had survived a tragic fire and used that experience to fuel her determination to help others. The article brought more attention, both positive and negative. Some people praised them as pioneers in education. Others criticized them for encouraging Mexican ranch hands and former slaves to read, claiming it would give them ideas above their station. Isaac and Amelia ignored the criticism and focused on their students, on the visible progress they were making and the doors that were opening for them because of their new skills. In December, Amelia realized she was pregnant. She told Isaac on Christmas Eve, sitting before the fire in their cozy parlor with snow falling softly outside the windows. Isaac's face went through a remarkable series of expressions: shock, awe, joy, before he swept her into his arms and spun her around, laughing. "We are going to be parents," he said, setting her down gently as though she might break. "Amelia, we are going to have a baby." "We are," she confirmed, her hand resting on her still flat stomach. "Are you happy?" Happy does not begin to cover it. "I am thrilled. I am terrified. I am grateful beyond words." He knelt before her and placed his hand over hers. "This child is going to have the best mother in the world." Their son was born in August of 1879, a healthy baby with his father's dark hair and his mother's gray eyes. They named him James Edward Kane, and he came into the world squalling and strong. Isaac was present for the birth, holding Amelia's hand and whispering encouragement, and when Dr. Morrison placed the baby in Isaac's arms, tears streamed down the cowboy's weathered face. "Hello, little man," he murmured, his voice thick with emotion. "Welcome to the world." Amelia watched her husband hold their son, watched the gentle way his large, rough hands cradled the tiny body, and felt her heart overflow with love. This life they had built together, this family, this purpose, was more than she had ever dreamed possible. The fire had taken so much from her, but in its aftermath, she had found something precious and true. They took a month off from teaching after James was born, but their students kept the school running with Eduardo and Mrs. Palmer, who had both become proficient readers, taking turns leading the classes. When Amelia and Isaac returned in September, James came with them, sleeping in a basket near Amelia's chair while she taught. The students cooed over him, and the children especially loved having a baby in the classroom. Life settled into a rhythm. Isaac worked at the Thompson Ranch, coming home each evening to help with James and prepare for that night's classes. Amelia taught and cared for their son and managed their household. They were busy and sometimes exhausted, but they were happy, deeply and truly happy. On their second wedding anniversary, Isaac took Amelia back to the creek where he had first told her he loved her. They left James with Mrs. Chen for the afternoon and walked hand in hand along the familiar path, remembering, "You ever regret it?" Amelia asked as they sat on the flat rock where they had sat so many times before. "Marrying me, tying yourself to a woman with scars, taking on the school and all the controversy that came with it." Isaac looked at her with those green eyes that had always seen her so clearly. "Never. Not for 1 second. You are the best thing that ever happened to me, Amelia Kane. You and James and the life we have built together. I would not change a single thing. Not even the scars, not even the scars. Because if the fire had not happened, I might not have met you. You might still be teaching at the regular school, and I might have just passed through Taylor without stopping. Everything that happened, as terrible as it was, led us to each other. I cannot regret that." Amelia leaned her head on his shoulder, watching the water flow past. "I love you, Isaac. More than I ever thought possible. I love you too. Always." They sat together in the golden afternoon light, and Amelia thought about the girl she had been, standing at the ruins of the boarding house with her face bandaged and her future uncertain. That girl had felt like her life was over, like the fire had destroyed everything she was and could be. But she had been wrong. The fire had not destroyed her. It had transformed her, stripped away everything superficial to reveal the strength and courage and resilience underneath. And it had led her to Isaac, who had seen past the scars from the very beginning, who had loved her not despite them, but as part of the whole package of who she was. The years passed, measured in school sessions and harvest seasons and the milestones of their growing son. James took his first steps, spoke his first words, grew from a baby into a curious, energetic toddler. The school continued to flourish, with more than 50 students now attending classes throughout the week. Several of their early students had gone on to better jobs or started businesses of their own. Armed with the literacy and numeracy skills Amelia and Isaac had taught them. In 1881, Amelia gave birth to their second child, a daughter they named Clara Rose. She had Isaac's green eyes and Amelia's light brown hair, and from the beginning, she was a calm, observant baby who seemed to take in everything around her with serious concentration. James was delighted to have a little sister, carefully helping his mother with the baby under close supervision. By 1883, the school had become such an established part of Taylor that the town council formally recognized it, granting them a small annual budget from town funds. It was not much, but it allowed them to buy more books and supplies and even pay a small salary to Eduardo, who had become their assistant teacher. Isaac had been promoted again at the Thompson Ranch, now serving as the head foreman overseeing all the ranch operations. The position came with a substantial increase in pay and a larger house on the ranch property. They moved in the spring, and Amelia immediately began planning how to convert one of the large barns into a proper schoolhouse where they could hold classes during the day as well as the evening. By summer, the new schoolhouse was ready. A spacious converted barn with large windows that let in plenty of light, rows of desks that Mr. Henderson had donated from his store, and a real chalkboard that Isaac had built and mounted on the wall. They held a grand opening celebration, with all their students past and present invited to attend. There was food and music and speeches, and when Amelia stood at the front of the new schoolhouse and looked out at the crowd of people whose lives had been touched by their work, she felt a profound sense of accomplishment. "Thank you all for being here," she said, her voice carrying clearly through the space. "This school began with a simple idea that everyone deserves the chance to learn, regardless of their age or background or circumstances. What we have built here is more than just a place to study rating and arithmetic. It is a community, a family of people committed to bettering themselves and helping each other grow. I am grateful to each and every one of you for being part of this journey." The crowd applauded, and Isaac came to stand beside her, taking her hand. "My wife is too modest," he said with a grin. "None of this would exist without her vision and dedication and refusal to accept the limitations other people tried to place on her. She is the heart of this school and the heart of my life, and I am the luckiest man in Texas to call her my wife." More applause, and Amelia felt her face flush with pleasure and embarrassment. But she squeezed Isaac's hand and smiled at the crowd, at these people who had become so important to them, and felt nothing but gratitude. Their third child, another son they named Thomas Isaac, was born in 1884. By then, James was 5 and starting to learn to read under his mother's patient instruction, and Clara was a talkative 3-year-old who followed her older brother everywhere. The Kane household was noisy and chaotic and full of love. Amelia had stopped wearing bandages years ago, comfortable now with her scars and the way they marked her face. Children who had never known her before the fire did not find her appearance frightening because she did not treat it as something to hide or be ashamed of. She was simply Miss Amelia, the teacher who was patient and kind and made learning fun. Sometimes people new to Taylor would stare or make thoughtless comments about her appearance. Isaac had learned to bite back his initial defensive anger, knowing that Amelia preferred to handle such situations herself. Usually, she would simply ignore the rudeness and go about her business with quiet dignity. Occasionally, she would address it directly, her calm words making the speaker realize their mistake more effectively than any angry outburst could have. One afternoon in 1885, a traveling salesman came through town, a slick-talking man in a fancy suit who stopped at the general store where Amelia was shopping with Clara. He took one look at Amelia's face and made an exaggerated show of recoiling. "Good Lord, woman, what happened to you?" he asked loudly. "You ought to wear a veil or something. Scaring customers is bad for business." The store went silent. Mr. Henderson's face reddened with anger, and several customers turned to glare at the salesman. But Amelia simply looked at him with calm, steady eyes. "I was injured in a fire," she said evenly. "I survived when others did not, and I am grateful for every day I have been given since then. As for wearing a veil, I prefer to go about my business without hiding who I am. If my appearance bothers you, I suggest you look elsewhere." "Well, I never," the salesman sputtered. "I was just saying what everyone else is thinking." "No," Mr. Henderson said firmly, coming around the counter. "You were being rude and unkind to one of the finest women in this town. Miss Amelia, as I call her even though she is a married woman now, is a teacher and a mother and a valuable member of this community. She has more grace and strength in her little finger than you have in your whole body. Now I suggest you make your purchases and move along, or better yet, take your business elsewhere." The salesman left in a huff, and several customers came over to express their support for Amelia. Clara, who had been holding her mother's hand through the whole exchange, looked up with worried eyes. "Mama, why was that man so mean?" Amelia knelt down to her daughter's level. "Some people are uncomfortable with things that are different or that they do not understand. That man saw my scars and did not know how to react, so he said something unkind. But his words cannot hurt me unless I let them, and I choose not to." "I think you are beautiful, Mama," Clara said seriously. Amelia pulled her daughter into a hug, her throat tight with emotion. "Thank you, sweetheart. That means the world to me." That evening, she told Isaac about the incident. They were sitting on the porch of their house, watching the sun set over the ranch while the children played in the yard under the supervision of their hired hand's teenage daughter. "I wish I had been there," Isaac said, his jaw tight. "I would have given that salesman a piece of my mind." "Mr. Henderson did that quite effectively," Amelia said with a smile. "And honestly, Isaac, it did not bother me as much as it once would have. I know who I am. I know what I am worth. One ignorant man's opinion cannot change that." Isaac pulled her close, pressing a kiss to her temple. "You are the strongest person I know." "I learned from the best," she said, leaning into his warmth. The school continued to grow and evolve. In 1886, they hired 2 more teachers, young women from Austin who had heard about their innovative approach and wanted to be part of it. With the additional help, they were able to expand their offerings, adding classes in music and art and practical skills like sewing and carpentry. Isaac had been teaching himself to read more advanced texts, working through books on mathematics and business, and even literature. One evening, Amelia came into their bedroom to find him sitting up in bed, deeply engrossed in a thick book. "What are you reading?" she asked, climbing into bed beside him. He held up the book so she could see the title. "The Adventures of Tom Sawyer. Eduardo recommended it. He said it was funny." Amelia smiled, remembering the first time she had read that book herself. "It is funny. Do you like it?" "I love it. I cannot believe there was a time when I could not do this, could not just pick up a book and lose myself in a story." He set the book aside and pulled her close. "You gave me that, Amelia. You opened up a whole world I never knew existed. You did the work," she said. "I just showed you the tools. You gave me so much more than that. You gave me purpose and family and a life beyond anything I ever imagined. I was just a drifter before I met you, moving from job to job with no real direction. Now I have a home and children and work that matters. Everything good in my life started the day you stood up to those men outside the saloon." Amelia thought back to that afternoon, to the stranger in the dust and the impulse that had made her speak up. It seemed like a lifetime ago, like something that had happened to different people. But in another way, it felt like yesterday, the memory still vivid and clear. "I am glad I did," she said softly. "Glad I spoke up, glad you bought me coffee, glad you had the courage to tell me you loved me." "Best decisions I ever made," Isaac said and kissed her tenderly. In 1888, James turned 9 years old, and he asked his parents if he could help teach at the school. He had become an excellent writer and was particularly gifted with numbers, and he loved explaining things to people in ways that made them understand. After discussing it together, Amelia and Isaac agreed to let him help with the younger students, working with them on basic reading skills under supervision. James thrived in the role, showing the same patience and enthusiasm for teaching that his mother possessed. Clara, now 7, declared that she also wanted to help when she was older, and 5-year-old Thomas said he wanted to teach people how to ride horses, which made everyone laugh. The years continued to pass, each one bringing new challenges and new joys. There were hard times too, droughts that stressed the ranch operations and forced Isaac to work longer hours. Illnesses that swept through the town and forced them to close the school temporarily, financial pressures that required careful budgeting and sacrifice. But through it all, Isaac and Amelia faced everything together, their love and partnership deepening with each passing year. In 1890, on their 12th wedding anniversary, Isaac surprised Amelia with a trip to Austin. They left the children with Eduardo and his wife, who now had children of their own, and took the train to the capital city. It was Amelia's first time traveling any significant distance since coming to Texas, and she was nervous but excited. They stayed in a modest hotel and spent 3 days exploring the city, visiting museums and theaters and bookstores. Isaac bought Amelia a beautiful leather-bound journal and a set of fountain pens, and she bought him a gold pocket watch with their initials engraved on the back. They ate in restaurants and walked along the river and spent hours in bookshops, both of them selecting titles to bring back for the school library. On their last evening in Austin, they attended a lecture at the university about educational reform. The speaker, a professor from back east, talked about the importance of making education accessible to everyone, about innovative teaching methods that focused on individual needs rather than rote memorization. When the lecture ended and the audience was invited to ask questions, Isaac surprised Amelia by standing up. "My wife and I run a school in Taylor, Texas," he said, his voice clear and confident. "We serve students who cannot attend traditional schools, ranging in age from children to adults. We have found that individualized instruction and practical, life-focused curriculum creates better results than the standard approach. What would you say to other educators who want to start similar programs in their communities?" The professor looked interested and asked several questions about their methods and results. Amelia stood and answered some of them, describing their curriculum and the outcomes they had seen. Other audience members asked questions too, and before they knew it, they were engaged in an hour-long discussion about alternative education with a group of professors, students, and interested citizens. As they walked back to their hotel that night, Amelia felt energized and inspired. "I had no idea other people were thinking about these same issues," she said. "I thought we were alone in trying to do something different." "We are part of something bigger," Isaac said. "A movement toward making education available to everyone, not just the privileged few. What we are doing in Taylor matters, Amelia. It is changing lives." "Our lives included," she said, taking his hand. "I cannot imagine doing anything else, being anyone else. This work, this life we have built, is everything I ever wanted and more than I ever dreamed possible." They returned to Taylor renewed and recommitted to their work. The school continued to flourish, and their family continued to grow in love and strength. By 1895, James was 16 and planning to attend the teaching college in Austin, determined to become a professional educator like his mother. Clara was 14 and helping teach music classes at the school, having inherited her grandmother's gift for piano. Thomas was 11 and already showing signs of his father's skill with horses and ranch work. Amelia was 40 years old, her hair showing threads of silver, her scars long since faded to white lines against her skin. She looked in the mirror one morning and saw a woman who had lived fully, who had survived tragedy and found joy, who had loved and been loved in return. The scars were part of her story, but they did not define her. They were simply marks on skin, evidence of a life lived with courage and purpose. Isaac came up behind her and wrapped his arms around her waist, meeting her eyes in the mirror. He was 44 now, his dark hair streaked with gray, his face more weathered but his eyes still bright with the same warmth and love she had seen in them that first day. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "How lucky I am," Amelia said. "How grateful." "I am the lucky one," Isaac said. "Every day with you is a gift." She turned in his arms and kissed him, long and deep, and when they pulled apart, she was smiling. "We are both lucky. We found each other against all odds, built something beautiful together. Our children are healthy and happy. Our work makes a difference. What more could we possibly ask for?" "Nothing," Isaac said. "Absolutely nothing. We have everything that matters right here," and they did. In their cozy house on the Thompson Ranch, with their 3 children and their school and their community of students, Isaac and Amelia Kane had built a life of purpose and love. The fire that had scarred Amelia's face had also forged her into the woman she was meant to be, strong and resilient and unafraid. And Isaac, the cowboy who had seen past the scars to the beauty underneath, had been her partner in every sense of the word. On warm evenings, they still walked down to the creek where they had first shared their hearts with each other. They would sit on the flat rock and watch the water flow past, talking about their day, their students, their children, their dreams for the future. And always, always, Isaac would take her hand and tell her she was beautiful, and Amelia would believe him, because his love had taught her to see herself through his eyes. Their story became part of Taylor's history, told and retold over the years. The scarred woman and the cowboy who loved her, who had built a school and changed countless lives, who had proven that beauty had nothing to do with unmarked skin, and everything to do with character and courage, and the capacity to love. And when they were old, sitting on their porch and watching their grandchildren play in the yard, Isaac would still look at his wife with wonder and say, "I see nothing but beauty here." And Amelia would smile, her scarred face radiant with joy, knowing that she had found the truest love of all, the kind that saw past surfaces to the soul beneath, the kind that lasted a lifetime and beyond.